Item number 2, SB 40. Motion from Ms. Reyes, second from Mr. Haney. Mr. Umberg, please proceed.
Well, thank you very much. I want to clarify a few things. First of all, this bill simply provides that the fees from last year will continue to this year. There is no budget cut. Let me repeat, there is no budget cut. Notwithstanding what the bar has said, for example, as reported by Senator Hertzberg over the weekend, that when you call to get a bar card and they say, oh, I'm sorry, you can't get a bar card because of budget cuts. That's not accurate, number one. Number two, notwithstanding what the bench bar has been informed that somehow because of budget cuts, the Jenny Commission can't be fully funded and thus we have judicial vacancies. That's not accurate. Number three, that the bench bar coalition was informed that the courts are in some way hampered because of state bar budget cuts. That's also not accurate, nor is there to be a reduction in force because of state bar budget cuts. That's not accurate. What this bill does do is, besides implementing the same fee as last year, it also increases legislative oversight. It provides for Senate confirmation for the executive director and the general counsel. There's been a great deal of controversy concerning the state bar. Thank you, Tom Girardi, for providing the revelation as to how much reform is required. We appreciate that. And I also appreciate the fact that for example, Ruben Duran, the current chair of the Board of Trustees, I believe is providing firm and positive leadership. Bar's heading in the right direction. But for right now, I think that we need to maintain the fee as it was last year, and I think we need to provide some additional structure and accountability for the state bar.
Thank you.
With that, I urge and I vote.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. The motion is to pass as amended. Ask the clerk to please call. Oh, Mr. Essayli.
Thank you. Your bill does more than that, Senator. It includes a provision that says that attorneys now are going to be required to file a bar complaint if they believe another attorney is engaged in treason, sedition, or insurrection. Why is that necessary to put in here?
So a couple things. One, California is the only state in the union that doesn't have, or at least didn't have until very recently, a requirement that attorneys report other attorneys who are engaged in misconduct. In terms of treason and sedition, well, that's become an issue in the last couple of years with respect to attorneys who facilitate, aid and abet, and even conspire to, for example, overthrow the government. They conspire to ensure that there's not a peaceful transition of power, both at the federal level, well, primarily at the federal level. So if an attorney, for example, sees that another attorney is, in essence, concocting a legal theory that purports to put the vice president in a position where the vice president is the sole arbiter of a national election, that would be treasonous. And so if a lawyer sees another lawyer doing that, they have a duty to report it to the bar. Doesn't make it a particular crime.
Okay. I have questions on that because we're talking about lawyers making constitutional arguments in a court of law. I think courts are well equipped to dispense with arguments, whether they have merit or not. I'm concerned with the weaponization of the bar complaint system against conservative lawyers, such as John Eastman, who's going through it right now, who made a constitutional argument about elected officials violating the Constitution and changing election rules. So I have a question. In 2016, there was an attorney named John Burke, B-I-R-K-E, and he filed a restraining order in California to bar all members of the Electoral College from voting for President Trump. In a motion filed in federal court naming all 538 members of the Electoral College, he claimed them voting for Trump would violate the Equal Protection Clause. They also were a number of attorneys who made an argument that Trump is unfit and under foreign influence, and therefore he should not be confirmed as president. So why have none of these attorneys ever suffered a bar complaint or proceeding, and would you report Mr. John Burke as a result of your bill now?
Well, they probably haven't received a complaint because this wasn't the law previously. But it is the law, I would hope, here soon, that if an attorney sees another attorney who is attempting to, for example, thwart the peaceful transition of power, that attorney would report the attorney. Treason is defined in federal code. If not clear enough, I'll be happy to further define it here using the federal definition of treason. Whether or not Mr. Eastman has committed treason or not, that's for others to judge.
So would you report Mr. Burke?
Well, I'm not prepared to respond to hypothetical questions, but if Mr. Burke fell within the definition of treason as defined by the United States Code, then yes, and I was aware of it, yes, I would report him.
Okay. All right. I'll close with this, Mr. Chair. I just have concerns. A lot of times as lawyers, we oppose actions of the government. For example, there was a big injunction where lawyers oppose the government interfering in free speech and censoring people on social media. I have a concern where if the government says, hey, we're acting in the public good, this is for public interest, and lawyers are challenging this, is this now treasonous to go against your government? And it was the policy in the United States to have segregation. If you attack those laws, you say those laws are bad, they're unconstitutional, is that treasonous that you're opposing laws of the government? So I'm just very worried we're going down a slippery slope of controlling what lawyers can argue. I want zealous advocacy. I want creative arguments, because that's how we change law in the United States. And so I just have concerns. If you're willing to take that out, I support this, but with that, I can't support it. So, thank you.
Mr. Haney.
Thank you, Senator, for your work on this, and certainly agree with a lot of the pieces of this, or all of it. But I did want to ask you about your approach on the fees question specifically. I know that the State Bar certainly feels that they're experiencing financial or budgetary hardships, and there's been inflation, and there was a state auditor report noted in the analysis that they believe that there may be some reason to at least have some modest fee increase, maybe not at the level that the bar is asking for. I wonder, just because you and I haven't spoken about this, I would love to hear your perspective and your thought process in not including a fee increase of any kind in this legislation.
So what is included is the ability for the bar to use the funds, the proceeds of a sale of the bar building in San Francisco to provide for operations. If next year it appears that there's a need for a fee increase, I'll certainly consider that. The tradition is that the chair of the Assembly Judiciary Committee carry the bill next year. But for this year, I believe that the bar needs to focus on discipline, focus on some of the other matters in the state audit report, focus on making sure that money is spent prudently, and that as a consequence of the sale of the building, that they'll have additional proceeds to be able to operate. But I personally am not in support of an increase in fees this year.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and just wanted to have that on the record as well and get your thoughts, and again, appreciate your leadership and your thoughtful process with this. Thank you.
Mr. Kuhnle.
Thank you, and I appreciate the author's work on this. I'm prepared to support it. I did have a question on the treason piece, so primarily around what would constitute knowledge and thus a duty to report. I get where you're going with it. We're all aware of the likes of John Eastman, Rudy Giuliani. Let's say I'm a lawyer in California. I'm watching MSNBC. I see them doing their thing. I believe it constitutes undermining democracy or treason. Do I have a duty to report?
So in terms of hypotheticals, if you see a report on MSNBC, I suppose if you believe everything that's on MSNBC, everything is the absolute truth, and it's a California lawyer who is advocating what you believe is treason under the federal definition, then yeah, you would have a duty to report. But my expectation is that every viewer need not accept everything that is promulgated on MSNBC or Fox or any other media outlet. However, if you, for example, are a partner with someone who is advocating, in essence, the overthrow of the government, then yeah, you would have a duty to report. So this is a report to the state bar. This is not an indictment. This simply tells the state bar, hey, you may want to look at this. Just like if you, as a consequence of both the state bar's rule, the new rule by the state bar, if you are aware of, for example, a lawyer who's stealing client trust funds, you have an yes, now you would have an obligation to report that, yes.
Thank
I
you.
think it could use a little bit more work in tightening that up.
Sure, I'd be happy to, whatever further clarification you'd like to provide, I'd be happy to entertain that.
Thank you. And before I go to more committee comment, I realize I skipped over support and opposition. So let me, we had our witnesses in support. Any further our main witnesses support, any further witnesses in support? Seeing none, do we have witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, I guess I didn't. I didn't do so bad after all. Well, there you go. Ms. Reyes, then Ms. Pacheco.
I understand that for purposes of the bill, to know means actual knowledge of the fact in question. A licensee's knowledge may be inferred from the circumstances. Is that your understanding then?
Well, actual knowledge, yes, it does require actual knowledge. So if you 100% believe that everything that is broadcast on TV provides actual knowledge, I suppose that you may have a responsibility, duty to report. I can't imagine that if you heard something on MSNBC and you didn't report it, that somehow would subject you to discipline.
And the other is there is still the protection of attorney-client privilege. If you acquire this information in an attorney-client relationship, that is not required to be disclosed.
If your client tells you that they are currently conspiring to overthrow the government, you're not required to report that unless they indicate that they're going to use violent means to do so.
Thank you.
Ms. Pacheco.
Thank you to the author. I share the same concerns as my colleague, the assembly member, and my concern is that the definition might be overly broad, so I feel like it also needs to be fine-tuned a little bit more, and so that's my own concern is the same.
Sure, and again, I'm happy to entertain suggestions beyond the federal code as to what treason is.
Ms. Pappen.
Just one, is the building sold already, or they're in the process?
Is what, I'm sorry?
The building, the San Francisco building that belongs
it's
to
in
the bar?
process.
It's in the process?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so no fees this year. As a member of the bar, I sort of
No
appreciate
increase.
that. No increase.
Yeah.
I meant no increase.
Right.
I really didn't mean no fees.
Right,
fees, yay.
right.
Okay.
Seeing no further questions or comments, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a unique situation where two branches of government have some responsibility for the state bar. Primary responsibility rests with the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has the primary responsibility for the regulation and the discipline of bar members. We share some of that oversight responsibility more and more. The Supreme Court also has the ability to raise fees should it decide to do so. But this is my attempt, our attempt, to provide for greater accountability of the bar, and we are funding the bar at the same level as last year. I urge an aye vote.
Thank you. We have a motion. The motion is do pass as amended. Ask the clerk to please call the roll. Yeah.
Mainshine?
Aye.
Mainshine, aye. Essayli?
No.
Essayli, no. Kuhnle? Aye. Kuhnle, aye. Dixon? Haney? Aye. Haney, aye. Clara? Pacheco? Aye. Pacheco, aye. Pappen? Pappen, aye. Reyes? Aye. Reyes, aye. Sanchez? No. Sanchez, no. McKinner? Aye. McKinner, aye.
Your bill is out.